A cool afternoon at a small park outside Hartford, Connecticut. The air fresh and crisp. Families sit together, children running and playing soccer, while teenagers sit silently on benches, occasionally checking messages on their phones. Dylan, a 16-year-old teenager, sits beneath a large oak tree, occasionally glancing at the book he brought along, holding it close to his body, oblivious to the sounds around him. Dylan's younger brother Lucas is playing in a soccer match with his team, and Dylan promised their mother that he would wait to take Lucas home after the game ends. Dylan, wearing a shiny black suit, a white shirt, and polished leather shoes, pays no attention to the roar of the motorcycles echoing in the air. But when the sounds of the motorcycles not only persist but draw nearer, a sense of unease fills the air. A group of 4 men, dressed in stiff, black leather outfits, suddenly stops outside the soccer field. They don't laugh or talk like a normal group of friends. Their eyes, sharp and challenging, are fixed on Dylan. Those eyes, cold as the winter winds, send a chill through Dylan's body, signaling that something is amiss. However, Dylan doesn't rush to make a judgment. He glances at them once, then lowers his head again to continue reading his book, trying to stay calm. But when one of them starts walking toward him, Dylan can no longer ignore them. Dylan couldn't help but notice the presence of the biker group. They didn't just pass through the park like they had in the past. They stopped, parking their bikes near the soccer field where the kids were playing, unaware of the looming danger. The group consisted of 4 men, each with their own distinct appearance, but all dressed in black leather, their eyes cold and sharp. They didn't speak, but Dylan could clearly feel the challenge in the way they were looking at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were deliberately provoking him. His heart pounding in his chest, Dylan remained calm, placing his book down and looking around. His younger brother Lucas was still playing soccer, but Dylan couldn't tear his eyes away from the group of men walking toward him. Anxiety surged within him, but Dylan kept his composure. He remembered his mother's words, "Never let anyone see you're afraid." Then, one of the bikers, a massive man with a shaved head, took a step closer. His footsteps seemed to echo, as though each step was marking the arrival of something tense and inevitable. Dylan knew this wasn't just a typical confrontation. This feeling, this standoff, was different. It was changing everything. The largest biker, the leader of the group, stepped closer to Dylan, his face a mask of challenge.
"What are you doing here, kid?"
His voice was gravelly, as if he had just issued an order to someone. Dylan remained calm, replying, "Waiting for my brother. Can't you see? I'm in a public park." The biker sneered, and his group closed in, forming a tight circle around him. They stood in silence, their eyes never leaving Dylan. These were men used to intimidation, and Dylan could feel the hostility emanating from each of their steps. Dylan showed no fear, but he wasn't naive enough to think this would blow over easily. He noticed the growing impatience in the eyes of the leader. "What the hell do you think this place is?" the man growled, his voice rough and menacing. "This isn't a place for little punks like you. This is a public park. You don't have the right to bully me," Dylan replied, his tone calm yet sharp. But Dylan's words did nothing to ease the tension. The bikers pressed closer, and Dylan could feel their hot, heavy breaths surrounding him. He knew that if he didn't act quickly, things could escalate very fast. Dylan slowly stood up, not rushing. He couldn't let himself fall into the trap of provocation. His years of karate training had taught him how to stay calm and deal with situations like this. He recalled every lesson his coach had taught him. You don't always have to fight, but if you do, act quickly and precisely.
And now was the time to apply everything he had learned. The biker leader kept moving closer, suddenly reaching out toward Dylan. "Why don't you teach me a lesson?" he challenged, smirking. Dylan didn't move. Each of his steps was a signal that he was determined to pick a fight. But Dylan was ready. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. The sense of helplessness from the biker group only fueled Dylan's confidence.
He knew this wasn't a contest of raw strength. It was about calm, precision, and being prepared. A soft exhale. Then Dylan locked eyes with his opponent. He might be stronger, bigger, but Dylan understood that his strength lay in a different kind of power. Not muscle, but control. There was no time for more words. The biker leader lunged forward, reaching out to push Dylan away. But in an instant, Dylan shifted his body with perfect precision, avoiding the shove. The other three bikers didn't have time to react before Dylan stepped forward, his right hand open, striking the leader's wrist. The blow made the biker pause, but Dylan wasn't done. He swiftly followed up with a high kick, smashing into the second biker's knee. The force of the kick was so powerful that the man crumpled to the ground, screaming in pain. The third biker charged, but Dylan was ready. He leaped into the air, spinning, and landed a roundhouse kick that sent the man flying backward, collapsing in a heap on the ground, coughing violently. The leader, his face now twisted in anger, lunged toward Dylan, trying to grab him. But Dylan dodged, slipping past him, and landed a solid punch to his chest, knocking the wind out of him. The biker stumbled back, red-faced with fury. The other three bikers lay motionless on the ground, while Dylan stood tall, his eyes calm but resolute. "I warned you," he said, his voice steady and unshaken. The entire space fell silent, no one daring to speak. Dylan stood there, breathing evenly, his eyes locked onto the biker leader, who was still gasping for breath from the powerful strikes Dylan had delivered. Dylan could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The initial tension seemed to dissipate, replaced by a quiet acknowledgement. The leader looked at Dylan with a look of sheer hatred, but his anger no longer held the same power it once did. A part of him realized that while raw strength could be intimidating, it was Dylan's resolve and preparedness that had mattered most. He panted, struggling to accept that he had been defeated by a young teenager. Dylan didn't change his stance, still standing tall, his hands clasped behind his back, not showing any sign of fatigue or arrogance. He simply exhaled gently, feeling the calm return to him. Everything had happened so quickly and unexpectedly. The people around them began to take notice, halting their activities, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Some pulled out their phones to capture the moment, while others stood frozen, stunned by the sight of a teenager holding his ground against a group of imposing bikers. The leader stood there for a moment, silent. Then suddenly he turned and gestured toward his friends. "Let's go," he barked, his voice heavy with frustration. The biker group backed off, trudging heavily toward their bikes. The roar of their engines filled the air, amplifying the tension even more. But just before they left, the leader turned back, one last time, his eyes still full of hatred. "This isn't over, kid," he spat, before turning around and speeding off like a gust of wind. Dylan stood for a moment, saying nothing, simply watching as the biker group drove away. Though the confrontation had ended, he still felt something lingering in the air. The tension hadn't fully dissipated, but what he could clearly sense was a victory. Not just physical, but a victory in the mind. He didn't turn to seek praise from the crowd. He just stood there quietly, observing, as if he had fought against himself rather than the bikers. After all, the lesson wasn't just about fighting or protecting oneself. It was about knowing how to control yourself, understanding when to act and when to stay still. "Dylan, are you okay?" Lucas, his younger brother, called out as he ran over, his face pale with worry. The boy looked at the bikers as they left, then back at Dylan, his eyes full of fear and admiration. "I'm fine," Dylan replied, offering a faint smile, the exhaustion not showing on his face. "I just did what needed to be done." Lucas stared at him, his eyes wide. You You're really brave. Dylan gently ruffled his brother's hair, then turned to walk away. It's not bravery. It's just knowing when to stand up. As Dylan and Lucas walked home, the air around them felt lighter, but Dylan still carried a quiet unease in his heart. Although he wasn't afraid, the leader's threatening words echoed in his mind. "This isn't over, kid." That phrase lingered like an unanswered question, leaving him uncertain of when the next confrontation would come. As they neared home, Dylan's mother stood on the porch, her arms crossed over her chest, an anxious look on her face. She saw the difference in Dylan's expression as he walked toward her, and her concern deepened. She opened her mouth to speak, but then Dylan's eyes silently told her to keep quiet, as if he wanted to keep everything to himself. "I'm fine, Mom," Dylan said, his gaze steady, though there was a hint of worry deep inside. "Just a little trouble, that's all." His mother looked at him, then glanced at Lucas, worried but also somewhat relieved. She could tell that, despite everything, her son had learned how to stand firm in tough situations. "It's best if you don't get into trouble like that again," his mother said, her tone firm, but filled with care. "Next time, if anything happens, don't try to handle it on your own." "I don't want you getting hurt." Dylan nodded, his expression serious. "I promise, Mom. But if it happens again, I'll handle it." The family entered the house in silence, but Dylan knew that the most important lesson of the day wasn't about victory. It was about understanding the value of self-restraint and discipline. The story didn't just end here. It was a significant lesson in his journey toward maturity. Dylan couldn't help but reflect on this confrontation. It wasn't just a moment in life. It was part of his journey toward maturity. He realized that patience and discipline helped him overcome this challenge without resorting to violence. This story isn't just a simple victory. It's a testament to preparation, inner strength, and above all, understanding one's value in every situation. When you stand up to defend yourself, you're not just protecting your body, you're also protecting your spirit and dignity. You don't need to be physically stronger than your opponent. You need to be stronger mentally. If Dylan's story has inspired you and made you want to stand up, remember that each of us can face life's challenges with resilience and wisdom. So what do you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next inspiring stories.